If I told you a country sells university degrees at gas stations, you would think I was joking. I am not. This is ex-Yugoslavia today. 6 republics that used to be one country, one flag, and somehow the chaos survived the divorce better than the country did. Americans have a video game for this kind of chaos. Over here, there's no install required. The Yugoslav passport got you into capitalist Europe and the communist bloc, visa-free. Almost nobody on either side of the Iron Curtain could do that. A communist country, and its passport was worth stealing. Doctor was free, university was free, your job was yours for life, whether you were good at it or not. And every summer, 2 weeks on the coast, in an apartment the company owned. In 1984, Sarajevo hosted the Winter Olympics, the first ever held in a communist country. They built a bobsled track down Mount Trebević. Remember that mountain. Of course, there was one party and one leader, and a secret police that took an interest if you said the wrong thing in the wrong room. There was an island for the people who did. They broke rocks there, and somebody was paying for all this. In 1970, the country's foreign debt was under $2 billion. By 1980, it was $20 billion, more than a quarter of everything Yugoslavia produced in a year. The prosperity of the 70s was borrowed. In May 1980, the man who signed for it died. Then the bill came due. Real incomes fell a fifth. The dinar went from 15 to the dollar to over 1,000. Fuel was rationed to 40 liters a month. You could drive on alternate days, depending on whether your license plate ended in an odd number or an even one. And there were shortages of coffee. In this part of the world, coffee is a 3-hour appointment, and the government could no longer guarantee it. Then, the 90s. The Soviet Union came apart by negotiation. 15 republics walked away without going to war with each other. Here we have a complete different story. Television explained, night after night, that the man next door was not one of you anymore. Enough people believed it. And on that mountain, above Sarajevo, 8 years after the Olympics, soldiers were using the bobsled track as a firing position, with the city sitting underneath it. 8 years. The British writer William Miller traveled through this region in the early 1900s. Everything here, he wrote, is exactly the opposite of what reason would expect. He was describing a place that no longer exists. He could have written it this morning. There's a saying here. In war, the state gives the guns, the rich give their oxen, and the poor give their sons. When the war ends, the state takes its guns back. The rich get new oxen, and the poor are still counting. 8 years after the fighting stopped, a team of European researchers went looking for what the decade had left behind. 3,000 households, 5 countries, chosen at random. Line up 11 men. In the worst affected country, 5 of them are living with something a doctor would diagnose. What shaped the outcome across all of those countries was what happened to people afterwards. Unemployment was among the strongest predictors in the study. The fighting stopped. The rules stayed on the books. And in every one of these countries, at roughly the same time, they stopped applying to everyone equally. Each found its own method. After the war, everyone assumed life would go back to normal. The chaos was finished. People would return to their jobs and pick up where they left off. The factory never reopened. You had spent your whole life learning to work hard and respect your boss. Now there was no work and nobody left to respect. There is almost no documentary footage of this part. What exists instead is the films. An entire generation of cinema from this region is about the same thing. A man and a woman trying to make a living. A family surviving on whatever anyone can find, hustle, or borrow. The camera showed up for the war. For what came after, we only have the fiction. One salary carries 6 people, and often the oldest person in the house is the one bringing it in, because a pension arrives on a fixed date and a wage does not. Everyone in the family knows exactly what that date is. And money itself had stopped being reliable, so people used what held its value instead. Cigarettes became a currency, more stable than anything the state was printing. If you had family across a border, especially in Western Europe, you waited for August. That was when they came home. Even a small amount of help went a long way. And somewhere inside all of that, a new subculture emerged. The country is broke. The money buys nothing, but turn on the television, and it is all diamonds. This is turbo folk melodies over an electronic beat filmed with the production budget of a country that could barely keep the power on. Sports cars nobody could buy. Mansions nobody could enter. Women dressed for a Las Vegas that had never seen Las Vegas. People queued for cooking oil and bread in the morning and watched all this glamour at night. Everyone on that screen radiates the same message. Everything is fine and nothing can touch us. And most of that sound comes from the East. Here's the irony sitting right inside the music. This was the soundtrack of Serbian nationalism, and the tones underneath it were borrowed straight from the people that nationalism was supposedly standing against. Suddenly, you didn't need to know how to sing. You needed to look good on camera. That was pretty much the whole job description. The biggest channel broadcasting this came out of the ruling party. The party was run, in part, by the president's wife. A whole genre tuned to convince a robbed country that the people who robbed it were stars. The same idea filtered all the way down to the street. This look had a name too, Dizelashi, named after the diesel jeans, and after the diesel fuel, a lot of the money in this world moved. Tracksuits, shaved heads, gold chains, trousers tucked into the socks. One story about that last detail traces to a young Belgrade man who lost his life at 21. Tucking the trousers meant whatever he was carrying slid into his sock instead of onto the pavement when he ran from police. Most of the kids wearing that look never carried anything more dangerous than a bus pass. It was a uniform. A teenager with his socks pulled up that way was dressing for the only version of success the television was showing him. The style came back years later, on kids too young to have lived through any of it, most of whom have no idea a gangster's getaway habit is the reason their trousers are tucked in. And then the wedding. In 1995, the genre's biggest star married one of the most wanted men in the country, a man who'd made his name through robberies across Europe, built a reputation during the wars, and came home to run the biggest operation in the underworld. It was filmed like a royal event, broadcast like a fairy tale, on state television. Polls from the time are the part that stays with you. Asked who they wanted to be, teenage boys in Serbia named him. The girls named her.
Zašto bi neko ko nije izgrađen ko ličnost mučio se za neku bednu platu kada može do novca I slave da dođe na mnogo lakši način?
And after almost 30 years, after everything this video just walked you through, we still have some signs of that era. They are around every corner if you look careful. Government-linked research estimates hundreds of thousands of people gambling daily across the two countries. In one survey, 40% admitted borrowing money either to cover losses or keep going. The state collects real tax revenue from every one of those shops, which is part of why closing them was never really the plan. Now, look at the paycheck underneath all of it. The average salary, officially, in both countries sits close to €1,000 a month. That figure comes directly from each country's own statistics office. And drive down any street in either country, and German plates are everywhere. Mercedes, BMW, Audi. Here's what actually explains that. And it isn't a mystery. Serbia alone imports something like 150,000 used cars from the EU every year, against barely 25,000 new ones sold. The average car on the road is 17 and a half years old. A Mercedes a German driver traded in a decade ago becomes here the most sensible purchase a family can make.
Servisnu kilometražu, se to I dalje šteluje, ne šteluje, šta kako? Nemam pojma. Stvarno ne znam. Koliko ja znam, brate, ne šteluje se, ja ne štelujem ništa, znači tako je.
€1,000 a month, if that. A betting slip in one hand. A 15-year-old Mercedes in the driveway. A house with the second floor still bare behind all of it. None of that is a contradiction. It's the same arithmetic this whole video has been running since the first chapter. The rules were never off. They're just still running on a smaller street with worse odds, 30 years later.